I don't know why I'm getting so much satisfaction out of drinking out of this tiny Pilsner.
That looks oddly like basically a wide mouth version of the Glencairn Scotch glass.
This may or may not be the size of glass you get when you ask to try a particular type of beer at a particular local bar.
Ah, that would make sense.
It may or may not have found its way into a purse of a friend of mine. All right.
Okay, we are socialed. We are good to go, and I'm going to hit the record button now. And all right, I'm going to do the sponsor plug, and then we're good. This week's Android Please podcast is brought to you by Linode. Check them out at linode.com/Android Please for a free $20 web hosting service credit.
Welcome to the Android Please podcast, your weekly audio source for all things Android. It is Thursday, April 21st, 2016. I'm your host, Matthew Smith.
I'm David Reddick.
I'm Ryan Whitwam.
Cody Toombs.
Cody Toombs. Thanks for joining us, Cody. We are on the verge of Google I.O., and as proof, Google I.O. has officially posted the schedule. You can now sign up for sessions, right? That's how this works?
You can add them to your list.
Add them to your list, right.
Things you want to do to go to. And this year it's outside, so like how hard is it going to be to like watch a session? Like you just kind of stand there, probably if they're running out of chairs.
You turn and face the direction of the speaker. Is basically
I think the Shoreline Amphitheater only seats like 15,000 people, so it's a pretty crowded little venue, obviously.
So the one catch to them posting a schedule is it's like round one. They're going to have, I think they said it's something like 108 sessions out of a proposed 190. So they're going to end up changing all the schedules. Half of those sessions are going to get moved to different time slots. There's a bunch of stuff that's going to get added. A few things will get dropped. There's no point to really picking a schedule yet. It's just kind of nice to look through and get an idea of what they want to talk about this year.
And there are probably secret things that they don't want to put on the schedule yet.
They said that actually. So yeah, certain things will not be added to the schedule actually until after the keynote on the first day, for obvious reasons, I'm assuming.
There's a lot of VR stuff. There's a lot of VR stuff there.
It's almost as though Google might announce some kind of VR product.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Perhaps. Maybe.
Google Cardboard 2 poster board.
No, it's going to be Google. It's Google Plastic.
I wonder
would love that.
Maybe they're just going to keep the cardboard branding though for whatever they make.
They will.
It'll just be the new cardboard.
They should call it Google Cardboard Fiberglass.
That would be terribly. It'd be terribly confusing to keep calling it cardboard, I would think. But I don't know. Google gonna Google.
The weird thing about it is, though, you can search for Google Cardboard on like Amazon or really any place that sells massive amounts of products and come up with any number of different things that are called Google Cardboard that aren't cardboard at all.
Yeah, there are plastic cardboard things.
Yep.
I think there is some metal one.
At this point, it's only third-party confusing. I don't think that first-party confusing is a territory they want to delve into anymore.
I don't know. Google kind of specializes in first-party confusing.
My conspiracy theory then is so cardboard is already used by so many brands essentially that like have free reign over the design because it's open source, and I wonder if the cardboard name itself has basically free licensing. I don't know what the deal is with that. But that would be a very bad name to use for an end hardware product on that basis, because the likelihood of confusion would be insane. So maybe cardboard also means a disposable trademark. Maybe the name cardboard implies disposability. They're not going to keep using it.
I imagine the cardboard licensing is much like the Android licensing, where it's just like you could just kind of use it.
Yeah. So I would bet if they come out with a perhaps a VR headset of sorts, that they would call it something else. Maybe Google VR, which would be the most unoriginal thing ever. But it would make sense.
How about this? They could come up with a name and solve an old problem all in one. Just call it Google Glass.
Mhm. Yeah,
That would be such a burn against the Google Glass team.
really. I mean, I mean, if they
I feel like that would be a Microsoft thing to do, aka Surface.
if they
Totally.
could if they could like make it sort of like a hybrid like VR and augmented reality thing, like where you could like see through the visor and like do things in the real world, then they could probably get away with saying like, no, this is the new glass, but it also does VR.
So Tango plus VR. So
Yeah.
Van Gogh? Van Gogh. Google Van Gogh.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Okay. Sounds good.
And it attaches to your ears, but it only has one ear strap. All right. Well, of course, I think it's not any well-kept secret that there's going to be a new version of Android. I mean, it's the least well-kept secret ever, considering they announced it. That is going to be discussed much further in detail at Google I/O. But this week, of course, we have Preview 2 features and functionalities that we have discovered in the Android preview release. And starting off with some new home screen information that's available when you're dragging and moving and doing all kinds of things with your programs and icons on your home screen.
Yeah, so I mean, you can do that pinch zoom gesture that I think like every other Android phone does, but stock Android never has. So that takes you to like the overview screen where you can like move your home screens around and manage them. And then the other thing is app info when you're dragging icons from the home screen. So that's a quicker way to get into the app info screen rather than digging through the settings menu.
Trying to think. I think Samsung does both of those already.
Yeah, I
Probably.
think they do. The app info one especially is useful when you want to disable some bullshit that Samsung's put on your phone.
Yeah, really.
Basically the only time I use it.
I'm wrong. The app info is only available when you're dragging things onto your home screen from the app drawer.
Mm-hmm.
And the overview is only available by long pressing on a blank spot on the home screen.
Really? You can't pinch out? You're
Can't pinch
sure?
out.
Could before. I feel like you used to be able to.
Yeah,
know
I
you
feel
can
like
do
used to-
that. You can do that
Well,
on.
you know
on,
what? You know what it could be.
HTC.
That could be launcher specific because I do have the Google Now launcher.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, of
yeah.
course.
It's launcher specific. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
stock one does things that your third-party ones won't.
So forget everything I just said. It is not any realistic demonstration of
lie.
what Samsung does. Yeah. All right. The next thing we had was quick replies from the lock screen, which is new in the preview too. So
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Quick reply works on the lock screen now. Yay, that's good for replying quickly without unlocking your phone.
I feel like that's kind of, I don't know, like I'm assuming that if you do the option to hide, the hide private details on your lock screen notifications, that would disable it.
Don't hide
No,
sensitive.
you just get to actually reply. You just get to guess. You can reply to a message. You just have no idea what it said.
Sweet.
Reply roulette, the newest
Reply
feature
roulette.
in Android N.
Yeah, but the setting to turn this on and off is actually in the same menu as that what to show on the lock screen stuff. So when you set up a secure lock screen, you'll be able to decide whether or not you want to do that.
That's good. That's good.
Pretty good.
All right, so the next thing we have for the preview 2 was a bug patch. There was apparently a bug that allowed you to see important data in the recent apps list. Apparently, that has been corrected.
Yeah, I mean, apparently this bug has existed for a really long time, like maybe since screenshots on Android were a thing, which was ICS. But it doesn't happen. It's not sort of thing that you would run into all the time, so it just didn't rate as a big enough deal for Google to do anything about until now. So I mean, basically, you as a developer can use this flag, the secure app flag, to just sort of indicate there's important data in this app, so the device should not be allowed to take screenshots or record. And so you just get like a little notification that says, you couldn't capture a screenshot if you try to do that in a secure app. But there is a way to sort of break that in older versions of Android, well, older, anything before the end preview, where you use the secure app, then you put the phone to sleep, you wake it back up and hit overview, and the preview image will have the secure information you're not supposed to be able to screenshot. And, that is technically a no-no. So now in end preview, it just looks broken. There's just like these big gaps where the previews are supposed to be. They should probably put something there so people don't just think their apps are messed up. But it's supposed to be like that. It just looks busted.
I feel like they should just put like a grayed out circle with like a lock inside of it.
Exactly.
Just something to give you some indication that, hey, there's secure information here.
Yeah, so, I think the person who sent us this tip originally was like, hey, I think that there's a bug in the new end preview because a bunch of my screenshots are just like empty.
It's a feature. The thing that I understand why this exists, and don't get me wrong, it's fine. But at the same time, if you're trying to steal somebody's personal information by like taking a picture of their phone, maybe you would like use your phone to take a picture
of their screen. Yeah.
It's almost as though there's a pretty simple practical workaround to this that actually doesn't leave a record of the fact that you then took a picture of the person's phone on their phone. I mean, I know it's for like Snapchat and stuff, but at the same time, it's kind of it's obvious.
There's no point to this.
It's ridiculous. It's like putting up caution tape or something. Like, it's gonna stop everybody.
The other side of it is the preview doesn't have the data in there. But if somebody is looking at the preview on your phone, then they kind of probably have your phone, right? So what's to stop them from just pressing it?
Yeah, theoretically, a lot of apps, well, some at least, would ask you to then re-authenticate if you go from the recents area, like a banking app or something. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. And I get that. I mean, I get that even if you did open it, you still wouldn't be able to screenshot it. But I mean, pen and paper works pretty good for personal data. I mean, screenshotting is not the only way to get it.
Yeah. So I want to. Okay, now go ahead, Cody. Sorry.
I was going to say I can understand blocking out the recents way more than actually blocking screenshots for an app. Blocking the app itself is kind of dumb. You're already in it. If you can see the thing, you've got what you need. Recents, I kind of get it for, like you said, authentication purposes. But other than that, there's no point.
Well, actually, you know what? Scuttlefield in the chat pointed out that you could accidentally take a screenshot of sensitive info and have it uploaded to Google Photos, and I think there was an option in Google Photos to have them automatically shared to your Google+. So, I mean, in theory, couldn't you just...
I know, if you've got that turned on, you probably have bigger problems.
You do, for sure. But
you need people to see stuff.
Hey, there was... So I don't know if anybody ever caught this. I don't know if it still exists even, but... There used to be a Twitter account that just retweeted people when they posted pictures of their credit cards on Twitter.
Oh, I'm sure it still exists. I remember that as well.
So I mean,
that was a good one.
There's only so much you can do to protect people from themselves. Is I guess the point I'm trying to make.
So I want to backpedal real quick to the story about the Samsung launcher. I want to say it's Samsung because I want to say Samsung's gone out of their way to do something stupid for the secondary option when you long press on an app icon. So you get two options: to remove the app or to move it. So you press this move key, and the app sits in this little hover over thing in the top of the screen, this bar.
You can add like a ton of icons to that too. It's kind of
you can switch them between panes. If you're like, why does this even exist?
I'll tell you why it exists. If you make very good use of your home screen space, like you have every spot filled, then you would use that to move things around.
Oh, so perhaps if you didn't have an app drawer.
Yeah, I suppose.
Dun dun dun.
I think that rumor is dead now, right? Like people have stopped parroting that.
Oh, it's dead, but it'll come back as a zombie soon enough, I'm sure.
Holy
Well,
cow, you're right. This is terrible.
with the launcher shortcuts thing that just happened, I think that pretty much kills the whole no app drawer story. Because there's, like, the only reason for that is to put it somewhere where you're going to have access to it, not in a launcher, or not in an app drawer.
Yeah, I have to wonder how much like internal debate there is at Google about the app drawer and whether that's like something that's discussed regularly or something. Because I think the app drawer is great. I always have thought the app drawer is great. I don't want to make home screens great again. I just want to keep them great with the app drawer.
It's like a wall that keeps your apps.
Preferably one that is not pain based. All right, I like my infinite scroll kind of situation. The pain's not so much. HTC's Sense app drawer is the worst app drawer. Combines all of the worstness of the various app drawers. You're getting incredibly off topic.
Yeah, we are, but that's okay. Have you listened to our show before, David?
I actually listen to it on a weekly basis.
Oh.
But I'm editing it. And by listen, I mean listen for somebody saying something wrong or awkward silences.
And remove them. Or just pronounce them. All right.
Usually.
So the last little bit from the developer preview 2 that we had on the sheet for tonight was virtual reality integration. Apparently, hidden in the app settings, there is a virtual reality helpers? Little helpers?
It's a helper services.
Helper services.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. We probably shouldn't have had this in the in the roundup because it's pretty. That's the whole story. It is a thing in Dev Preview 2 called VR Helper Services.
Kind of shot our wad on VR, and then Google kind of made the story a non-story by then releasing a schedule for I/O that was all like VR, 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 VR.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything right now. So
it says no installed apps have requested to run as VR Helper Services. So all it does is tell you that it doesn't do anything.
But now we have a much more pertinent story to get to.
Yes. Much more meta. So anyways, podcasts on Google Play, of course, have been rumored for a very long time, and we heard news that they were going to be coming this month, and, well, they did, if you are in U.S. and Canada anyways. So there's the whole geo limitation there. But yeah, so podcasts are finally on Google Play Music. I don't see it yet.
I support this.
It's you might have to. I think you'll have to install the latest version of Play Music. We have it on EPK Mirror. But even installing that didn't immediately activate it for some people. There's a server side thing too. So. But it finally exists now after all these months of waiting, and you can subscribe to this podcast in it if you want.
You could do that.
Yes.
It doesn't have it doesn't have a lot of the features that other podcast apps have though. So I mean, if you listen to a ton of podcasts and you're using like Pocket Cast or something now, then you probably just want to keep using that.
Right.
Most likely.
This is more of a casual kind of like I listen to one or two podcasts every now and then, so you don't have to install a whole separate app to do that.
Yeah, I'm like kind of the killer thing for me is I'm guessing it doesn't have variable speed playback.
It's not. No, that is one of the things it does not have.
And that's kind of a deal breaker for me.
Do people really listen to podcasts at higher speed than they're recorded?
I listen to them at 1.5 every time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah, I don't do that either. So I mean, I know a lot of people do though. It's just never made sense to my brain to do that.
I've got one podcast. I was going to say I've got one podcast that I listen to at something like 1.3. Everything else is like 1.1, maybe 1.2. Just to speed it up a little.
So for me, like the honest reason why I do it is very practical. Most of the podcasts I listen to are 30-minute podcasts, and I have a 20-minute commute. So it was just
Okay.
logical to set it to 1.5 speed so that I could get through a podcast on my daily commute. Now, that being said, I've gotten so used to it that even like there's a podcast that I listen to where the shows are generally speaking like anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. And yeah, I listened to that one at 1.5 speed too because holy hell, 4 hours. And yeah, I've just gotten so used to it. In fact, one show that I listened to, I've gotten so used to listening to 1.5. The show also happens to be a radio show. If I turn the radio show on and listen to it at normal speed, I swear to God they're drunk. Like that's all I can think of the entire time I've listened to this. These people are freaking drunk.
Oh man, that is
Yes.
weird.
So apparently Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon do PTI stone drunk on multiple occasions. At least that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Well, that's fun.
It's fun.
So we have one more end preview story thingy.
Story
It's kind of
thing.
end preview.
It's sort of.
Well, it was originally in preview. Now it's everything.
Yes. Google Camera version 3.2 from the N preview is now no longer limited to the N preview.
Yes, so it does things that people want their Google Camera app to do, and now they can do that. It does the I think we talked about this last week a little bit. It does photo captures while shooting video. Slow motion is in a different spot. It has sort of a different vibe. The shutter button looks different. Yeah, I mean, if it hasn't shown up in Google Play for you, we have it on APK Mirror. You should download it.
I'm curious if there are people out there who use. I mean, obviously, if you have a Nexus camera, you use Google Camera. But I'm curious if there's anybody out there who uses Google Camera on a non-Nexus device.
I'm sure there are some, but I don't understand why
Yeah,
you would.
it's not as good, really.
It really isn't. And the whole reason to me is I would want like the HDR Plus, but HDR Plus only works on Nexus phones. Otherwise, you get like some kind of HDR works in non-Nexus phones, right? But like it's probably not nearly as good.
I don't know. Never tried it. I imagine that there are some phone manufacturers who can't make a camera app that's as good or better than the Google one. I mean, I guess that's probably true. But, I mean, let's be honest, most of the people listening to the show probably aren't buying those phones.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's possible. At the end of the day, you know what? It takes a lot of work to make a camera app truly terrible. It's a shutter button, man. How wrong can you get it? It's kind of how I approach it, at least.
Wade County points out that Motorola's camera app stinks, and he uses it on his Motorola phone. So.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, Motorola's camera app is pretty lame.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Well, there you go.
It is
Because
pretty bad.
it's often you hear Motorola, it's like stock Android, but they make great tweaks like their own camera app, and if it sucks, then like that's not a good argument.
The problem with Motorola's camera app is that it doesn't have tap to focus.
What?
So the way I know it sounds insane when you say it. So like the default mode for that app is it focuses in the middle, and you just tap anywhere on the screen to take a picture, which is okay, I guess. And then the alternative mode is that you have this little focus like reticule that you can tap and drag around, and it'll focus wherever you leave that, which is way more work than just tapping.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Whoever came out with that should be drawn and quartered. That is
It's,
awful.
It's not good.
Cool.
All right, so we're moving on to Android at Arms, a segment of our show which we don't usually have in our show. It's the rare Android at Arms, but this week there's a pretty big story coming out of the EU. So antitrust charges have been filed against Google for several things that they do with Android, and they're going the whole Microsoft with Internet Explorer route. I just feel like it's unfair preference towards Google services, and yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
part of the case mirrors almost exactly the situation with Microsoft and IE a couple of years back, I guess like a decade ago now, because they object to Google requiring all Android OEMs that license their apps to pre-install Google Search and Chrome.
And make search the default search provider.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like a big part of the EU objection. And then the other half is all of the anti-fragmentation agreement stuff that we've heard about a few times now. A couple regulatory bodies have raised their eyebrows about that, but I think Europe is the first to like really take it seriously. And well, I mean, Google's going to have to deal with this for years now to figure out who's going to do what to fix this.
Yeah, and you know what? I posted this article, which obviously wasn't very popular, but I don't see a problem with knocking off the anti-fragmentation clause of MATA. I think at this point, Android is so big and powerful, and Google services are so desirable on the phones that there's no reason for this clause to really exist anymore, other than to strengthen Google's already ridiculously strong business position.
Well, you know why they might want to keep it is if they are indeed planning to expand into China again. That is a market flooded with Android phones that don't run Google services already. So an anti-fragmentation clause would help them sort of tame that crazy market.
But the funny thing is, I think they're actually going to have a bigger problem with that than they think, because there are good services in China for Chinese users that Google basically doesn't match, because Google doesn't have strong Chinese products, and the needs of that market have proven, time and again to be pretty different from the West. They just have different services and they prefer doing things a different way. I think Google, if anything is going to actually cause that clause to be dropped, I would bet it would be an expansion of Google Play into China, because I don't think they'll get Xiaomi or Huawei or Oppo to agree not to sell phones without Google Play when they already have these successful ecosystems that are making them money.
Well, does Google's requirement right now say that they can't pre-install other app stores? Is that still a thing? I know you can't put app stors in Google Play.
You can pre-install other app stores, yes. You can do
So,
that.
I mean, they could still install all of the services that they have. All the anti-fragmentation clause would require is that they can't then release phones that don't also have the Google stuff in it.
Well, I guess they can't release phones that don't fork Android.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what they can't do.
Yeah, they can't release Android
That's true.
phones that are
Yeah.
incompatible. So as long as they're willing to put Google Play services into all their phones, I mean, I feel like if they can keep the anti-fragmentation clause, that would help Google get its foot in the door to make sure that they actually have a chance of competing with all these services.
Maybe I'm missing something, but what benefit does Xiaomi have in agreeing to do that? Like, what do they get out of it?
Well, I mean,
content.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more content in Google's ecosystem than.
But the question is, certain content, obviously is going to be appealing to Chinese users because China is rampant with piracy for popular.
App stores in China are the number one source of new Android malware.
Yeah. So, I mean, Google would obviously love to get in there. And at the same, I think there's going to be some interesting stuff that plays out there, because there's also this gray area, right? So, I think the way the MATA agreement for the non-compete works, you agree not to create a fork of Android that's incompatible, but you don't agree to ship a device without Google Play services. You can do that. There's nothing stopping you. You just can't do it with a version of Android that's incompatible. So, but nobody does that. So it's this weird gray area that I don't think Google's really explored yet. So I wonder if you could ship phones with Google services everywhere else in the world and in China, ship them with compatible Android, but without Google services.
But isn't the way Google checks that with don't they use the CTS to do that?
So
and
that's what makes it weird.
Yeah, if you don't go through CTS, that they would never know.
That's the question. So what is compatible? I'm not sure in the CDD if Google services are in there or what. It's been a while since I've read it. I would be curious to see how that ends up going. But at the same time, going back to the fragmentation thing, what is the problem with if, say, LG decides they want to make an incompatible version of Android for this crappy $80 smartphone that they're going to sell in developing markets. And the whole reason they want to make an incompatible phone is because they don't want to load a bunch of stuff in the Android OS that is totally useless to the people in these markets and that eats up storage and that probably consumes battery life.
I mean, I think for Google, that's like a precedent thing. That phone that you described would not have any particular harm to the Android ecosystem, but they don't want OEMs to think that that's a thing that they can just start doing.
Yeah, but the thing is though, in what realistic world is there going to be a compelling product that runs forked Android that isn't a very specific niche?
So well, you and I would of course recognize that this phone is like a different product, and if it's not compatible with other Android phones, this is a concept that we can come to terms with. Imagine that that Samsung did this, and so there's a Samsung phone that runs Android, but it doesn't run the Android that works with everything else. And let's say that there's somebody who just always buys Samsung Android phones because that's just what they do. And they buy this new Samsung Android phone and they get it and they're like, oh, this doesn't actually do any of the things that my phone does. Why is this an Android phone?
But that's the thing. To me, this is so unrealistic. There's no universe in which Samsung is going to try, essentially, willfully damage its own brand in the eyes of a consumer in order to ship a forked version of Android. It's like this non-existent theoretical universe.
I mean, Samsung does make Tizen phones sometimes, and those
those are marketed in. Yeah, they're not good for the brand. So Samsung stopped doing it because that was a shitty idea, wasn't it?
It's like Samsung's never had a bad idea and acted on it.
Yeah, but at the same time, that's the thing for me. It's like everybody says, well, what if manufacturers, they confuse consumers? And it's like manufacturers have no interest in confusing people who are then going to get pissed off that they were confused.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's definitely not they don't go into it let's do something confusing. They go into this is a great idea, and it actually turns out to just be a very bad idea.
But at the end of the day, how terrible is it? If somebody buys a phone and realizes, oh, this phone is not what I was expecting, I'm going to go return it.
So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing is, I think the way that this product makes it to market isn't because somebody sits and decides that they want to make this thing that has a bunch of incompatibilities. They come to the table thinking, we're going to make this new thing that's going to have this new ecosystem that's going to do all these amazing things, and then their budget gets cut, or their developers can't meet deadlines or whatever the case may be, and they end up releasing it half-baked. So I think there's a realistic chance that something like that could happen just accidentally based on a greater plan.
Why is this so terrible? What is the world going to come crashing down because of this? I don't understand what the harm is in letting companies experiment with this stuff when it's obvious that it's almost never likely that it's going to achieve anything resembling market penetration. And the only extant example of a forks being successful is Fire OS, which isn't so terrible. It's fine. I mean, I don't like Fire OS very much, but people who buy Fire OS devices don't spontaneously combust. It's not.
I don't think I would say anybody likes Fire OS, though. I think that's just sort of I would like to buy a very cheap Android tablet, and Amazon sells those. Oh, it runs Fire OS, I guess. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. For me, it's okay, so what is... I just don't see the problem in saying, okay, maybe Samsung wants to make a crazy, wacky tablet, because Android tablets generally aren't very good. What if Samsung could make a fork of Android where they make this tablet do stuff that's actually, oh, wow, that's actually kind of cool, and maybe they partner with Microsoft, get some productivity software on there, and it's probably not going to be good, but it could have some interesting ideas. And part of me says, you know what, I don't see anything that's so terrible.
Well, I mean, what Google could do to maybe get away from the version of the clause that's upsetting the EU without harming the Android brand is they could just say, look, you can make non-compatible Android forks if that's your thing, but you can't call it Android.
Yeah, they would have to change the licensing of the Android name, and that wouldn't be a thing. But the harming of the Android brand has very little value to begin with as a brand, as far as market value goes, at least. So I'm not sure that's... Google has already chosen to put the Android brand out there. Amazon could call Fire OS Android if they wanted. There's nothing stopping them from doing that.
And also, it's probably worth pointing out that there have been some pretty terrible phones that have been released with Android on them. I mean... If we're being honest, probably a significant portion of the terrible phones that have been released in the last 10 years have had Android on them.
That is actually surprisingly good point. So, I mean, some of the really bad ones have also been Windows Phone. So let's not leave out Windows Phone here, or Symbian.
Okay.
10 years. We're getting Symbian too. So, yeah, I just, I think this clause, they came up with it when Andy Rubin was in charge and when Android was kind of fragile and small, and they didn't want people to take what they've created and then run off with it and market something that directly competed with it and then just kind of, piggyback on Google's innovations. And that was kind of obvious, like, why they would do that. But now that Android's so big and powerful, like, is it not? I don't necessarily see that as being a valid reason anymore.
Well, I think one of the initiating reasons, part of it was somebody running off with it, but the other part was they were worried about what Microsoft did to Java years and years ago. Oracle or Sun Microsystems created Java. It kind of started to catch on a little bit, and Microsoft came out with their own version of it. They basically duplicated a lot of stuff, then added this really thick layer on top of it. And so developers got super confused. There was this whole thing about Microsoft Java versus Sun Java, blah, blah, blah. It got really messy. And I could totally see that being the impetus for Google turning around and saying, well, we don't want somebody to come out with their version of Android, which, let's be honest, Microsoft probably would have done.
But they could do that already.
Microsoft kind of sort of has, because they bought Nokia when Nokia had that.
But that's the thing.
Weird Android phones.
Microsoft is free to do that right now. They can come out with their own version of Android. They can call it Android. They can say it's Microsoft Android. It's better because they don't make GMS devices. They're not bound by this clause. The only people who cannot make forked Android devices are basically every single company making Android devices, which is what seems weird about this. Like, oh, well, you're free to do whatever you want with Android, unless you're probably making Android phones, and then you got to kind of play by the rules here.
But go far enough back in time, and I think Samsung would have liked to do that.
Oh,
yeah, and that's I mean, historically, the clause made sense.
Yeah.
I think today it makes less sense.
I'm with you. Right now, yeah, it's kind of not relevant anymore.
Yeah, it's entirely possible.
It's something they can throw out.
That Google will just say, okay, fine, we'll not do this anymore if that will, assuage Europe's fears.
And I think that's fine. That's kind of why I was like for dropping the clause is, listen, if you're going to have these regulators on your back for these other reasons, which essentially come down to business decisions, and you've got this third thing that's essentially a matter of principle, drop the principle. If you want to keep making money.
But if we could just not have a browser ballot on Android, that would be.
I don't care about that either. I'd be fine with that.
I don't want to do that every time I set up a phone.
But
yes, I would like to use. I would like to use Google services.
For browser though, I'd be fine with that. Now, if it's search or something, then
I'm sure it would be search too, because that seems to be what has upset them more than the browser.
Search Google will fight to the bitter end, I'm sure, because
they should, because oh my god, I don't want a bunch of extra search things installed on the phone. And
yeah, neither do I. I agree with that. Browser I could care less about. I'm going to choose Chrome anyway because not anything better on Android. But
okay,
search, I'd be annoyed.
Really quick, let me ask this though: do you think the EU would drop it if Google said, "Okay, clause 2, yeah, go ahead, we're done with that, we'll let that one go"? Would the EU drop their case, or would they hold on for more? Because seriously, there's no government that is more into holding a grudge than the EU.
I mean, we don't know the inner workings of the case or anything, but I feel like from their statement on the matter that they're pretty serious business about the search thing, because they've made objections to the way Google handles desktop search for years too. This is not new for them.
Yeah, I think this will play out over years. I mean, they have the same thing going on in Russia, where it's just undisguised. It's anti-competition with Russian companies. But so I think this is going to take a long time, and just giving up that one thing. I don't know. Maybe this new person at the European Commission apparently has decided that after the whole Microsoft debacle, with Microsoft still never having paid the fine that was levied 12 years ago, that maybe fines aren't an effective mechanism to getting companies to cooperate with antitrust investigations. So, maybe they would accept that as a compromise, but I have no idea. I don't have good insight into EC antitrust internet policy.
All right. Well, I think we've covered that. In fact, we know way more now than we ever knew before about the EU and their feelings about Google and antitrust, except for the fact that none of it matters because they're just going to decide whatever they want. Anyways, so let's move on to a word from our sponsors.
It really helped if I unmuted myself.
It does help.
When we do these things. It's a real issue sometimes. I'm just going to go ahead and start that again. Have you ever wondered who hosts AndroidPolice.com? No? Well, I'm about to tell you anyways because of this week's podcast sponsor, Linode. And Android Police has been hosted on Linode for over 5 years now, and we've been very happy with them. And that really is a big part of why they're this week's podcast sponsor, because we can recommend them wholeheartedly. For being a listener to the Android Police podcast, you can get a $20 Linode service credit if you go to linode.com/Android Police. That is L-I-N as in no, O-D as in dog, E.com/Android Police. And that $20 credit isn't a credit you can't use. That gets you 2 months of service on Linode's base tier, which costs $10 a month. Everything's billed hourly, but if you price it out per month, it's $10 per month for that basic tier. And that gets you a gigabyte of RAM, a CPU core, 24 gigs of SSD storage, 2 terabytes of transfer capacity, 40 gigabits per second in connection on the network, and 125 megabits per second out, all for just $10 a month. Linode offers a variety of plans that scale all the way from 1 gigabyte of RAM and 1 CPU core to 96 gigabytes of RAM and 20 CPU cores. So they have something there for everybody, depending on your server needs. Linode has state-of-the-art servers. They've recently switched from Zen to KVM virtualization, which provided Unix benchmark increases of over 300% for virtual server performance. So they are fast, and that native SSD storage coupled with a 40 gigabit network and processors, which are the new Intel E5 Xeon processors, which are very fast, offer you cutting-edge servers for not really all that high of a price. You get 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week support, even on holidays. There's a 7-day money-back guarantee for any service, and you can get a server running in under a minute. There are add-on services available for backups, node balancers, and Longview. Everything there to really meet your needs for a server. And like I said, if you head to linode.com/Android Police and sign up today, you'll get that $20 credit. You can check out what Linode's all about. I mean, they host Android Police, and we like them. So what have we got to lose?
All right. So now we have some product review to go over. So the HTC 10 review from our very own David Ruddick.
And Ryan is obviously, he has a phone as well, so we can have our dueling opinions here. I like the phone. I think it's good. I think HTC did a better job on a phone than they've done in the last 2 years, since the M7 at least. And generally, I like most of the good battery life, pretty good camera. The software is the least offensive version of Sense ever. Everything about it is, for the most part, pretty good. The things I take issue with, the camera is finicky. The laser autofocus is a pain in the butt, especially in low light. I get some pink shifting on the camera in low light. The display has a red shift at off angles. That's a polarization thing, I think, maybe. Or it just looks weird, and it makes the colors look especially odd if you're even remotely off straight on viewing angle. And it just makes it kind of, look like a kind of a subpar part. The brightness of the display in bright sunlight isn't very good either. It just kind of feels a little bit cheap in that regard to me. The boom sound speakers they're not bad or anything. They're just not amazing. They're not beating anybody else. Even the S7, I think, to my ears, sounds better for spoken word content than the new boom sound speakers. So, I think HTC built a very good phone. It's very likable. I like holding it. I like using it. The battery life, like I said, is good, which is huge, obviously. And the design is uniquely HTC. I think for $700, it's just too much money, though. For $600, it's a little more palatable for sure, but 700 is too much, at least to me.
Yeah, I think that we mostly agree on the nature of this phone. Is that like it's a good phone. It does a couple of things probably better than the Galaxy S7. I mean, I think most people would choose Sense over TouchWiz, even though neither one is really terrible now. Uh, but why? I don't know why you'd buy this phone over the Galaxy S7 when you consider the screen and the camera.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thing. Is the 10's camera is good. It's the same sensor as you get the Nexus 6P. It is also just as slow as the Nexus 6P for captures. You know.
Yeah, I don't know how DxO Mark tests cameras, but the idea that they gave the HTC 10 the same score as the Galaxy S7 is ludicrous to me because they are not the same.
I don't know how they test cameras, but I'm going to bet that HTC maybe paid for some insight into that process.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I think outdoors the HTC 10 is really close in quality to the G5 and the Galaxy S7. Indoors, it starts to get a little bit weird in like medium light, and then in low light, like you said, it shifts pretty hard to the warm end of the spectrum, and I'm noticing like a lot more noise than
Yeah.
I would see with other high-end phones. And it does like it does like that post-processing like smoothing a little bit too much. You sort of lose some of the details with that. But HTC's kind of always done
Yeah.
like that.
You kind of get the mosaic effect. That was actually really prevalent, I think, on the G3. I think that was the G3 back in the day. That was probably the most extreme case of it I'd ever seen, at least.
Yeah. So I mean, the cameras. I mean, it's fine. I guess. I mean, it's better than like every budget phone camera. But I mean, it's not as good as the other 2016 flagships.
Yeah.
And the screen, I didn't notice the red shift at first, because you kind of have to be on a lighter background to notice it. But once it's pointed out to you, it is you cannot unsee that.
Yeah, and the problem is it makes color reproduction pretty inaccurate. It's even slightly off angles. I think that again is to do with the polarization. And like I said, the panel itself doesn't get bright enough in bright sunlight. LG's gets brighter. Samsung's gets way brighter in terms of visible contrast. So Samsung's killing it in the screen game, and nobody's even close.
They are way ahead of everybody else. I mean, the
Yeah.
screen on a Galaxy S7. I mean, it's not the sort of thing that you might notice if like you've seen a Galaxy S7 once and then you like buy an HTC 10. You might not look at the HTC 10 and go, "Oh, that's not as good as that Galaxy S7 I saw last week." But if you have them like next to each other to compare, it's startling how much better the Galaxy S7 looks.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are basing it on older AMOLED screens. If you look at the S6, the S6's screen was. This is what always ends up happening, at least usually. This year, I think it's a little different. The S phone ends up having a dimmer screen than the Note phone that follows.
Yeah.
And so the S6 looked kind of dim, and then when the Note 5 and the S6 Edge Plus came out, those were much brighter. But the S7 and S7 Edge have brighter yet screens than even those phones, and it's a huge difference. It is such a better display overall. The camera, in daylight, I think it depends a lot on what you look for in an image. So if you look for social media shareability and just overall contrast and making things pop, Samsung's camera is way better. It's just not even close. Samsung over sharpens to an extent, but they basically they process the image in a way that for most people it's probably what they desire out of a photo. They want to make sure that the central elements of the picture really pop. There's a lot of contrast. Subtle details are very well contrasted against backgrounds. So I think that makes for better pictures for cropping, especially given the small sensor size, or the small megapixel count, I mean. Whereas HTC has gone for the more natural look, where things have less discernible edges. Things are a bit fuzzier. and not necessarily in a way it's unrealistic. It's supposed to be more realistic in terms of the way the image is processed. But I think the way people want to see photos is probably closer to Samsung's interpretation, even if that's less
Yeah,
realistic.
the 10 sometimes it looks a little bit washed out by
Yes.
comparison.
The thing I would say about the 10s, the issue I had in daylight compared to the S7 was that you get this fringe lighting effect around the edges of the picture and direct sunlight, and the S7 is much better at avoiding that. It's able to even the color of the sky out a lot better, whereas the 10, you'll get much brighter sky on the edges of the photo if the sun is out at least. I noticed that in several images, and lens flare seems to be more common on the 10
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, and that I think has to do with the very high aperture of the lens. There's this effect that essentially comes into play once you start making the lens, open so wide, that there are going to be distortions and other effects that start to come into play, and I think that's what happened there.
It also kind of gets that that almost like vignette thing going on when you have it in pro mode. Like if you try to like output a raw image, it just gets like dark around the edges.
Yeah, and that's because the processing for JPEGs is accounting for the vignette effect. So that's you could deal with that with something called a lens profile, but nobody's going to build a lens profile for a smartphone.
So I mean that's something that happens with raw images on phones all the time. It just seems it's kind of pointless to even shoot in raw because you always have to fix all these little things that you would never have to worry about with a real camera.
Yeah, and I guess but still overall it's a good camera. Feature for feature, it stacks up well against the S7 and S7 Edge. And then the front-facing camera has OIS if that matters to you.
I've noticed the fingerprint sensor on the 10 seems better than the one on the Galaxy S7 for me. I don't know if you noticed that too, but I
don't know. I would say it depends, I guess.
I mean, I feel like I can put my thumb on the sensor at like almost any angle and it'll work, but the Galaxy S7 is much more finicky about it being like pretty close to like up and down or sort of like a roughly holding the phone angle.
Yeah, I don't know. What I ended up doing with the S7 S7 Edge was putting in both of my thumbs twice into the thing, and that seemed to help substantially.
That'll do it.
I do that on all my phones now because it seems to make a difference, at least to me. But yeah, I didn't notice a huge difference. It did seem reliable enough for sure. I wonder, is HTC, I think, are they using Nexus Imprint? Because I feel like Samsung's still using their own thing on the S7.
I don't know. I mean, is Nexus Imprint hardware or is that software?
I think that's software, and I think the big thing to tell is that the amount of time it takes to register a print in the first place. Samsung still takes a while. Nexus Imprint takes like 4 or 5 impressions usually, maybe a few more than that. But Samsung
you're
takes
talking
like
about on
10,
the initial setup of the
right? Yeah.
Samsung's takes forever.
Yeah, the HTC 10 is pretty quick. So I mean,
I bet Nexus Imprint maybe Nexus Imprint is a little more lenient or something like that. But I don't know. I haven't researched that. Maybe HTC's using their own thing too. I'm not certain. So the other thing I take issue, everybody says Sense is like, oh, it's so close to stock Android, and it's not any closer functionally to stock Android.
You know what it is? It's the quick settings. The quick settings look like stock Android, and that's what everybody. No, I know they're not. Like the icons are different, and like the layout is different, but it has this superficial, like glaze of stock Android, and that's what sticks into everybody's mind when they're like, oh yeah, that phone. It looks like stock Android.
And that really is what, because part of me was thinking for a while there, okay, am I missing something? Is like there's something more stock about this, like some deeper interpretation that I'm just not like looking in on? And no, it came down to 2 things. The quick settings and now the settings UI look more like stock, even though the quick settings, you can't adjust the order of the toggles, you can't add new toggles, which is decidedly unstock.
You know what? Like that irks me that they don't have an NFC toggle in there because, like many phones, the HTC 10 has that icon in the status bar when NFC is on, which is annoying to me. But you can't turn it off without going like 3 levels into the menu.
Yeah, and then you go to the settings UI, and you're like, huh, this looks kind of stock. And then you open up the settings menu on the M9, and you realize, oh, wait, this is the same settings menu they've always had. It just has a different color scheme, and it uses stock Android toggle layout. And that's it. And so I think people are looking at these superficial things, and that's what they're pointing to as stock. Now, I understand that there's another layer of bloat, like how many services is Samsung running in the background versus how many is HTC running in the background, and that's a valid point. It's not something I've really looked too deeply into. But if you're judging it on functional level of stockness, here's the hard truth. You have the HTC 10 unlocked, has 23.9 gigabytes of storage available out of the box. You get a Galaxy S7 unlocked, it has 24.8. HTC is loading 900 megabytes more crap into the OS than Samsung is.
I mean, yeah, that's more data. That number is bigger, but it doesn't feel like that when you're using the phone. There are fewer duplicated apps on the HTC 10. They don't even have a gallery app anymore. It just has Google Photos.
So part of it is that's not necessarily just apps. That can be customization or not. I hate.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I don't know how to phrase this right, but that could be. Go ahead.
No, whatever makes sense is bigger than whatever makes TouchWiz. But and I mean, if you care about that extra gigabyte of space, that could really concern you. But the experience of using the HTC 10, at least, it feels like there's less stuff going on.
And I have a hard time, buying into that on a function on an OCD level.
Look,
sure.
I don't know that makes it considerably better in any way. But I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that there aren't 2 calendar apps on the phone.
Yeah, definitely. And they still do have a few redundant apps, but there are fewer than even there were on the A9. The gallery app being one such example.
Yeah, I mean, and it has the stock calculator app. It's just little things like that. It's nice. It doesn't change my opinion of the phone one way or the other, but it's just it's good that they're not just loading up their own versions of things unnecessarily.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And at the same time, I also think that for stuff where you don't have the Google version pre-installed anyway, I don't have such an issue with manufacturers doing their own version if it fits more with the way the device skin looks in the first place. Samsung has their own calendar because it looks like the stupid settings menu. I mean, it's just it's their look, and I can't blame Samsung for wanting to put a calendar that fits in with the rest of the OS.
I mean, you can still blame them for hiding the status bar unnecessarily in all of their apps.
I agree with that. That is dumb. It's very annoying too. You need that extra 0.14 inches of screen space so bad. But I just think that the notion that Sense is probably marginally more stock-ish, I guess, than TouchWiz or LG US.
That's totally fair. It's not a huge difference. I mean, I think people who just for whatever reason don't like TouchWiz, they don't like the style, they'll probably like Sense more. But I mean, if it's all the same to you, I don't think one is so much better than the other that I would recommend it.
So that's it's kind of what I said in the review. So where you've essentially got 3 kind of levels of Android. You've got the Xiaomi, Huawei, Meizu, all those Chinese companies that are doing this crazy stuff that is functionally altering Android in really serious ways sometimes. And the level of that alteration varies, but it can be super disconcerting for someone who's used to stock Android behavior to go and use those devices. And then you've got LG, Samsung, HTC, and probably a couple other smaller manufacturers in there where, yeah, they're altering the theme and they're probably changing app preloads, and maybe they have their own services and functions and features they add. But functionally, if you go use, say, a Nexus 6P or a Motorola phone, it's not like using a Samsung phone is very different at all. It's pretty much the same.
You know where things are pretty well.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I look at this. So you've got essentially the Ultra themes with major functional changes from all these Chinese OEMs. You've got the very aesthetic theme changes. Sense, up until recently, was probably the most aggressive of the theme changers. and then TouchWiz, and then LG UX, and then you've got very close to stock, which is Motorola and Google. So it's I just think that HTC maybe gets a little too much credit for being stockish right now when they really aren't any more stockish in a big way than Samsung or LG.
All right. So, hey, we've got some antiques and some home screens to get to real quick, but I wanted to throw back a little bit to our Throwback Thursday post. Sony Walkman phone. I'm going to pull some images from this article. Sony Walkman
this is,
phone.
Also basically an antique.
Yeah, it's right up there. But this is from 2011, and you gotta see the pictures. This is the fattest phone I've ever seen.
It's
so
amazing.
It looks like a bar of soap.
It does look like a
colorful.
bar of soap. So this is the HTC Walkman phone. I'm sorry, the HTC. The Walkman phone from Sony Ericsson from 2011.
And look at
Very colorful.
what is this? These shortcut icons in the four corners of the phone. It's got access to the Walkman app at all times.
Yeah, this thing was insane. And it was Sony Ericsson Indonesia, so it was like apparently market specific. But it was just totally weird. The Sony Walkman W8, if you want to look it up. The W8 is the model. It was the first of several Walkman Android devices to date. The most recent one, I think, was at CES this year. It was this year. They announced another one. It was absurdly expensive. That was like $1,500. But this was kind of it was really weird, and it was huge, and it was ugly.
What's the screen size on this thing?
3 inches apparently.
3 inches.
3 inch. Okay.
That is tiny. It's even smaller than the G1 had.
Well, I just want to point out that my first reaction to this screenshot right here is that the mail icon is completely inaccessible in the top left-hand corner for right-hand. But then you say it's a 3-inch screen. I'm like, oh, never mind.
That'll fit like in the palm of your hand. It'll make you feel like a giant.
Oh, this thing's amazing. And so this was our Throwback Thursday this week. And so the thing it reminded me of was Sony built another Walkman device, but it wasn't a phone. So they stripped out the phone stuff and said, no, we'll just do a PMP. And it was the Walkman Z, which had a Tegra 2 dual-core processor, and it ran Gingerbread with a 4.3-inch screen. And what amazed me, so it's a portable media player, or personal media player, whatever you call it. PMP is portable to me. But so for 8 gigabytes of storage in a portable media player, $250 for 8 gigs.
Things were different back then.
Hey man, I once bought a Diamond Rio MP3 player that had how much did it have? I want to say 32 megabytes of memory, and it cost me $130.
And so let me tell you about this whole. So you're like, oh, 8 gigabytes. Well, that's I guess understandable. So you just put all the micro SD card. This didn't have a micro SD slot.
Oh my goodness, no, that's unforgivable.
And also, even worse, the greatest sin it committed. No micro USB port. It is a proprietary multi-pin USB and charging and data cable. Sony. What?
And to this day, Sony still makes poor decisions.
Oh man, good times.
Yeah, good
times.
All right, so our antique for this week, it came in from Justin. He actually had 2 antiques, one of which we've seen before, but one we have not, and I'm going to put up on the screen here.
I am surprised we haven't seen this before, because that was a super, super popular phone.
The Dink.
Everyone loves the Dink. The Dink was it's a Nexus 1, but for Verizon, and I don't have to pay full MSRP for it.
Yeah.
That's great.
The Nexus 1 was originally supposed to come to Verizon, and then they ended up canceling it.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, but you can buy the Droid Incredible, which is pretty much the same thing.
All right.
Except I don't think it ever got updated, or maybe it got one little update.
It's kind of the same thing, except its back was designed after a topographical map.
Yes,
Yeah.
at the time I was like, oh, this phone's kind of cool, and I was an idiot. And this looks terrible. This phone is objectively ugly.
I mean, it's when you think about it though, like that's kind of a clever shape because back then phones needed to be so thick to fit everything.
He did.
But at least like having these beveled edges, it made the phone look not as massive.
No, just like Matt said,
It
made
looked
it look
weird, yeah, no,
yeah.
weird. But I mean, no, and it had a trackball. That was still in the days of trackball.
It wasn't a trackball though. It
was a
was
trackpad or
yeah. It had like the little IR thing coming out of it, so it would track your
okay.
thumb moving, or something like that.
It was a ballless trackball.
Yeah, it was odd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, that the icons on this phone are so ancient. It's
Yeah, so apparently this particular device is still in full working order, other than the fact that the Play Store will not launch. It won't open at all. So,
yeah.
do we want to guess at value?
Oh, I bet these have well, no, I guess not. Verizon devices probably held their value worse, less intercompatibility. I would probably guess basically the same as every other phone of this age we've had on the show. So who cares?
Yeah. Well, and
$30 to $50.
I'll just spice things up. I'll say it is worth at least $60.
Wow.
I'm gonna guess $20. That's what I'm gonna guess.
Oh boy! All right, now I have to look.
That's where I was going to go.
So my guess, the reason I guess low is because I feel like Verizon and HTC completely ruined this brand with like the 2 and the 3 that came out after it.
Oh boy, let's see here. Trending at $20. Yeah, I mean, there's some of them that are doing. Oh wow, because they had the 2 and then the 4G LTE, and it's clouding up the search results. But yeah, like I see one here for $40 in excellent condition. So probably varies based on condition.
How gullible the buyer is.
Yes, pretty much. Pretty much.
So the other phone that Justin had sent in was the
G1, which
G1.
we have seen before.
We have seen before, but this one is the beautiful brown color.
Oh, very rare.
We'll forget about. So yes, there's a brown G1, the OG.
Forgot about or blocked out.
Yeah. Either one, it's fine.
Okay, yeah, it's a G1. Didn't we have a G1 on before?
Yeah,
we did.
That's why we're not doing that. We're not going to guess on value. We're going to move on.
Let's do some home screens. We've got our 2 home screen picks of the week.
Yes.
We do. So our first one is from Christian. So I'm going to pull this one up here. This is Christian's home screen.
Okay, so I would go to the second pane, which appears to be the primary pane.
The middle one. It's a very stripped down sort of thing.
He has Google goggles. Why?
Yeah, well, it's an icon pack, so maybe there's some other app that he felt that icon would work well for. I don't know.
That could be the cardboard icon.
Yeah, behind it looks like cardboard, or at least a cardboard thing. I don't know. Maybe those are all cardboard-related apps. But at any rate, he's using an icon pack. I think he said which one. Yeah, Click UI. I'm kind of meh on those. I don't like the really aggressive shadow thing on everything.
It looks like there's the video player or something like that on the other side of the goggles. I'm thinking that's probably like all media entertainment kind of stuff. Or
maybe.
Except the group next to it has a video player, Pocket Casts, and whatever that is. So
yeah, Christian, your grouping confuses us. Why are you doing this to us?
I just thought the whole threes thing was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
that was pretty much
it's a neat layout for folders, if you're into that. And
it's
then
a better layout than the app sphincter.
Yeah. So in the middle of the row at the bottom, it's just a Nexus X. I guess that's the app drawer. Is that what that is? Yeah. Or is there like a gesture for the app drawer, and that's some crazy thing that we don't know?
You're not going to get an answer to that question.
Yeah.
Just pointing that out.
None of you are actually Christian? Secretly?
Nope, none of us. We are not Christian. But my guess is I'm with the app drawer option. I actually kind of like it as an app drawer icon. I mean, I realize it's completely irrelevant, but...
Well, it's just aesthetic anyway. Why not?
Sure.
It'd be kind of cool if we could change that up more often.
Oh boy. All right, so we have another home screen. This one from somebody else, Dakota, right? Yeah, I got it right.
Dakota, yes. Let me pull that one up here.
So this one, when we saw this one, David called it rain meter, and that is exactly what I thought of
Rain
when I
meter
saw it.
5000.
Yeah,
This is like you want to meditate to this home screen. It's so zen.
Yeah, it's a Nexus 4, so it's still got the old nav buttons at the bottom. But there's a waterfall in the background, and it's got like this soothing sort of the white text with the ambient information, and also teeny tiny little icons.
Yeah,
at the bottom.
I'm holding a Nexus 4 in my hand right now. I'm just trying to picture how small that text would.
Yeah, no, that's my thing. Like, this is like something that's very pretty to look at, but usability-wise, no.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna point out for folks who have not come to Android via this path, this is very BlackBerry-esque. Very BlackBerry-esque.
I guess maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, even iconography that small is not very BlackBerry. That's pretty small. The thing about things like, okay, I'm going to go on a rant about this briefly. The reason UIs don't look like this is because they kind of suck to use when it's like set up like this, because everything looks the same, everything's tiny, and you have all this unused space that could be better suited to being functional. I mean, I get why people want UIs to look like this because it's beautiful, but it's not very nice to actually use. That's my rant.
No, that is an entirely reasonable critique of this approach to home screens.
It looks nice. I like it.
Yes,
I would love to look at this.
Dakota, you made a very pretty home screen. It just looks like it is terrible to use.
Yeah.
Unless you have tiny fingers. If you have tiny fingers, I apologize.
Okay, if you have really tiny, if your fingers are essentially toothpicks, then this could work.
Her fingers were replaced with styluses.
Yes. Stylus fingers.
Apple pencils.
Edward Stylus fingers.
Yeah, that's the episode title. Okay, we're good. All right. Edward Stylus fingers. I'm guessing somebody's already come up with that, but it's okay.
It's okay.
Okay.
I'm sure not every episode title you've ever had has been completely original, but that's all right.
Matt, they're all completely original. It's one of the main tenets of our show, clearly.
All right. Well, hey, I think that's going to about do it for this week's show. If you have home screens, antiques, or just questions, you can email them to us at podcast@androidpolice.com. You can also call us at 530-HELLO-AP. That is 530-435-5627. And you can find us on Twitter at Android Police and on Google Plus and Facebook.
And once again, thank you to Linode for sponsoring this week's Android Police podcast. You can check them out at linode.com/Android Police for a free $20 web hosting service credit.
Hey, so I realize that this has been said on the show before, but has Matt's unending list of questions actually ended?
Oh, yeah, it kind of seems like it has.
Wow.
Oh, well. Maybe when Cameron left, Matt decided it's time to end the unending list of questions.
Yeah. Maybe he still asks Cameron the questions.
Maybe he does. That would be really weird.
He just like sends Cameron emails all the time.
All right.
No, but
I'm
he always
going
did voicemails, so he
Oh
calls
my god,
Cameron.
somebody just put the creepiest picture in the chat of somebody using a stylus finger on an Apple, or it's not an Apple Watch, it's a Samsung Gear. Oh, it's terrifying. I'm going to have nightmares about this.
Oh, that is awful. That's so bad.
And it looks like you could.
I have chills.
That looks like something you would use to inject poison secretly into your enemies.
All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast.